When loyalty becomes a battleground, the true cost is measured in hearts broken, not in victories won. In the chaos of divided friendships, the silence between us speaks louder than any argument ever could. It's hard to find peace when those you trust are drawing lines in the sand, leaving you to choose a side. The more we take side, the further we drift from the common ground that once held us together. Confusion reigns when loyalty becomes a weapon rather than a shield, and hearts are torn in the crossfire. We thought we knew each other, but now every glance feels like a question with no answer. In the mess of divided loyalty, the truth is often the first casualty, lost in the noise of what's right and wrong. Friendships are supposed to be anchors, but sometimes they feel more like ships caught in the same storm. As we choose sides, we forget that it's not about who wins, but about who stays. It's the silence that lingers after the words are spoken that really hurts, when there's nothing left but uncertainty. The hardest part of taking sides isn't choosing one, but realizing that a piece of your heart goes missing with every decision. We want to be heard, but in the end, it's our actions that speak louder than words ever will. The deeper the divide between friends, the harder it becomes to remember the good times we once shared. When loyalty is tested, it's the smallest misunderstandings that tear us apart the fastest. Our hearts are torn between what's right and who we care about, and it's in that tension that the mess begins. There's no peace in a battle of hearts, only the quiet sorrow of knowing something precious is slipping away. The weight of being stuck between friends is the weight of 1,000 unspoken words. What once seemed unbreakable becomes fragile when we start choosing sides, and the cracks spread wide and deep. Friendship should be the one place we can seek shelter from the storm, but now it feels like the storm itself. It's not the argument that hurts, but the realization that things may never be the same again. We want to hold on to what we have, but sometimes the harder we cling, the more we risk losing. In trying to pick a side, we often forget the side that matters most, the side of understanding and compassion. Our friends' sides are clear, but the space between us grows darker with every decision made. The hardest battle is the one fought within, when the heart is torn between loyalty and truth. Each side we take pulls us further from the place where we used to meet in harmony. When everything we knew begins to unravel, it's the small moments of connection that we miss the most. Sometimes the toughest choice is not deciding between sides, but deciding to let go of the need to choose. We think we're picking sides for clarity, but all we find is confusion, and all we lose is peace. Friendships are like fragile threads, and the more we pull on them, the more we risk tearing them apart. In the middle of the mess, we forget that love should be the glue, not the force that tears us apart. When everyone has chosen a side, it's hard to remember that we were once united by something much deeper. The strongest friendships are tested not by the sides we take, but by how we hold each other up in the storm. In the fog of conflict, it's easy to lose sight of what really matters. The love and connection we once shared. Even when we're on opposite sides, there's a quiet part of us that wishes for a way back to where we were. Sometimes the greatest strength isn't in choosing a side, but in holding on to the bond that has always been there. In the end, it's not about who was right or wrong, but about who was brave enough to try to heal the divide. Friendship isn't about taking sides. It's about standing by each other, even when it feels impossible. The real mess isn't in the sides we take, but in the hearts we break in the process. When we start dividing ourselves into factions, we forget that what made us strong was our unity. It's easier to choose sides than it is to choose compassion. But in the end, compassion is what we all need. In the midst of confusion, the best thing we can do is pause and listen. Not to pick a side, but to understand. Each time we choose a side, we push a little further away from the person we used to be together. It's not the arguments that matter, but the distance that grows between us with every word that's said. Sometimes, the more we try to fix things, the messier they become, until the only thing left is the hope for healing. When friends begin to pick sides, the space between them feels wider than the world itself. The greatest gift we can give each other in times of division is understanding, not judgment. It's easy to get caught up in the battle, but harder to remember that we're fighting for what we used to be. Friendship isn't a contest to win. It's a bond that needs care, not division. In times of uncertainty, the true measure of a friendship is not in taking sides, but in holding space for each other's pain. The mess doesn't come from the disagreement itself, but from the way we let it shape the way we see each other. Even when the sides are clear, the heart still wonders if there's a way to bridge the gap and find peace again. The heart knows when it's been torn in two, even if the mind refuses to acknowledge it. What we once shared can't be erased by sides drawn in the sand, but it can be clouded by the weight of unresolved feelings. In the end, it's not about who's right, but about who is willing to mend what's been broken. The mess isn't always about the conflict itself, but the unspoken hurt that lingers after the sides are taken. The hardest truth to face is that sometimes even the best friendships can get lost in the chaos of choosing sides. It's not the sides we choose, but the love we leave behind that will always linger in the spaces between us. When our friends are divided, it's easy to forget that we're all just trying to find our way through the mess together. The lines we draw today might be erased tomorrow, but the scars they leave behind can last much longer. In the end, all we really want is to feel seen, heard, and understood, even when the world around us seems divided. We think the sides we take define us, but it's the kindness we show in between that truly reveals who we are. When friends turn against each other, it's not the conflict that hurts the most. It's the feeling of being alone in the middle. The weight of the choices we make in the heat of a moment can echo for a lifetime, even if we don't realize it. It's easy to take sides, but it's much harder to rebuild the trust that was lost along the way. In times of division, the heart longs not for victory, but for the return of peace and understanding. Every friendship has its fractures, but it's in those cracks that we find the opportunity for healing if we choose it. When we start focusing on what divides us, we forget what once brought us together, the shared moments of joy. It's not always about choosing the right side, but about standing firm in our belief that love is stronger than division. In the aftermath of every conflict, the hardest part is finding our way back to each other after the lines have been drawn. The mess we face now is only temporary. What lasts is the effort we put into healing what's been broken. Each side we choose takes us further from the simplicity of what once was, a friendship built on mutual respect and care. It's in the spaces of disagreement that we have the greatest chance to learn, if we choose to listen rather than argue. The more we fight for sides, the more we lose sight of the bond that once tied us together in understanding. Friendship isn't meant to be a battlefield, but sometimes it feels like one when emotions are left unspoken. When we let go of the need to be right, we open the door to healing and reconciliation. It's not about picking sides, but about picking each other up when the weight of division threatens to pull us down. In a world divided, the rarest and most precious gift is the ability to find common ground despite our differences. The hardest part about standing in the middle of divided friends is knowing that sometimes both sides have valid points. When we fight over our differences, we forget that at the heart of every disagreement is the same desire to be understood. The conflict between friends isn't a sign of weakness, but a reminder that love sometimes requires the greatest of the efforts. It's not the lines drawn between us that define us, but how we choose to cross them in the name of love. As friends take sides, the quiet longing for the peaceful connection we once shared grows louder. The mess we find ourselves in now is a reflection of the emotions we didn't express when we had the chance. It's not about fighting to win. It's about fighting for understanding, for healing, for the friendship we once cherished. In a world where everything is polarized, true strength lies in choosing to bridge the gap instead of deepening it. Sometimes, the hardest part isn't standing on the side of truth, but understanding that everyone has their own version of it. Friends may take sides, but the heart knows that there's always more to a story than what's visible at first glance. There's no peace in a divided friendship, only the constant ache of wondering if it can ever be repaired. The messiness of this moment won't last forever, but the lessons we learn in this time of tension will stay with us. True friendship isn't about agreeing on everything, but about loving each other enough to find a way through the hardest times.